Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of Association Transformation, our international, transatlantic, award winning, always exciting conversation. And I once again have the pleasure of Andrew Chamberlain, my co host, my friend, my inspiration, joining me. Is that too much?
Yeah, you kind of went over the top then. You,
Do you guys want to be alone?
yeah, well, it was like that, wasn't it? I kind of thought I believed it, and I believed it until that point. I thought, yeah, my God, yeah, she's saying I'm a friend. Oh
Well,
no, she's saying I'm inspirational. Right, okay, so this is all
Alrighty.
just she's just being facetious.
we were just talking about roasts, and I was thinking about how I might intro your roast when we roast Andrew Chamberlain at when you hit that pinnacle of fame and notoriety, or when you're about to kick the bucket and we host a roast. I was just thinking about how I might start it off, but
That is such a beautiful thought. Thank you. That's such a beautiful thought. And for the courtesy of or for the benefit rather of our non-US listeners, we're not talking about a Sunday roast, are we? We're talking about where you ridicule me in front of people I don't know.
it's a joyous occasion to celebrate your life through humor and self-deprecation.
Yeah, like pretty much like every recording we do on this podcast, a wee bit.
I consider these therapeutic. So
For you, I need therapy afterwards.
okay, seriously, Andrew, I need you to focus.
I'm totally focused, as always.
Focus, please. It's a very I'm excited about this topic as a proud professional credentialed association executive. I think improving ourselves and demonstrating to the outside world that association management is a legitimate profession and one that we commit to not only through academics, but through how we conduct ourselves. I'm excited to chat CAE today, and even more excited about our guest, a longtime friend and collaborator, but more importantly, I was trying to think of how to describe her. CAE guru, the coach, the queen of the CAE. I mean, when you think CAE prep, you think CAE testing, you think study groups, you think CAE mentorship. I don't know. Do we have a drum roll sound effect here?
I'll find one, right? I will
okay,
find
if you could
one.
get on that,
I
I'd
will plug
appreciate
it onto this, right?
Yeah, if you could get that. Anyway, Cecilia Sepp, I am so excited to have you join us on Association Transformation. Finally, thank you for making time. We had chatted for a while, brainstorming some CAE topics, but really it was the holistic nature that we wanted to get into, and how CAE can not only transform association professionals, but their organizations. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how are things going in the CAE world these days?
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you both. It's great to meet Andrew and Elisa. I'm so glad I finally was able to come join you guys on Association Transformation. To the audience, hello, I am Cecilia Sepp. I am a certified association executive. I am currently working as a consultant. My consulting company is Rogue Tulips Consulting, and through that company, I run an education program for certified association executives called the 501c League. And I am also a podcaster. My podcast is called Nonprofit Conversations, and we talk about all kinds of subjects like Andrew and Elisa do. So,
I bet you're probably a lot more civil with your guests and your co-hosts than perhaps Elisa and I tend to be with one another. I hope that's the case.
well, it's actually a lot of fun here. I do try to be like respectful of my guest and not tease them too much. But no, we have some raucous conversations.
Oh,
Okay.
no, we just teach each other. We're very kind to
Oh,
the guests.
heck,
We're
yeah,
very kind and
absolutely.
respectful to the
Nice.
guests.
That's good. That's good because I think that way people might want to come back.
That's
Indeed.
great. This
But
is a safe place. This is a
so
safe space. No, but Cecilia, before Andrew, plays the victim again, let's talk about I think the true transformative power of the CAE. A lot of people think of it as just letters after your name. I need that certificate to become an executive director, or to demonstrate to my board that I am an expert in what I do, while they are experts in their own professions or their own industries. But again, more holistically, what can the CAE do, not just for a professional, but for their organization?
Well, I think this is a great conversation to be having right now, because globally we're coming out of the lockdown after effects still. I mean, there's still a huge ripple effect across everything. You have people looking for jobs, you have people trying to hire people, and the Certified Association Executive, which is what CAE stands for the global audience, is a way to make yourself stand out in the marketplace. But why do you do it? The reason you do it is because it demonstrates that you've made a commitment to the profession. Because as Elisa was saying earlier, a lot of people don't even realize this is a profession. I mean, nonprofit management's a business subspecialty. It is a unique way of practicing nonprofit business, because what a lot of people forget is 501c nonprofit status is an incorporation status under the IRS code, Internal Revenue Service of the United States. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to use the CAE, in my opinion. This is my goal. This is because Elisa was trying to figure out, well, is she a guru or queen or whatever? Not a queen of anything, but I am a CAE evangelist. And the reason
there you go. That's good. I like that.
Oh, thank you very much.
CAE evangelist.
Yeah, evangelist. I do wordsmith occasionally. But the reason I am a CAE evangelist is because it is a marker that designates that we actually are a real profession. We're real professionals. We're not worker bees. We're not people who just do stuff. We're not to be told what to do. We're not employees in that fashion of like, we are a person, do this, do that, do this. We're professionals who know how to do our jobs. And so demonstrating that to the marketplace, I mean, because, frankly, I am just tired of people saying, nobody knows what I do for a living.
There is that moment at the Thanksgiving dinner or the family event where someone asks you what you do, and you first start by saying who you work for, and you hope that the organization resonates, but then they say no, but what do you do? And you find yourself struggling for the words, and they have no clue. They glaze over immediately. But
yeah, that's true. I have a cousin on my husband's side of the family who saw me talking about CAE on Facebook a few years ago, and he's like, well, what does that mean? And I said, well, it means I'm a certified association executive. He's like, but what does it mean? What do you know how to do? I'm certified to run an oil rig. How is that comparable? And I'm like, well, and so I had to explain that. But I thought it was a good question, because there's so many certifications in the world. There's so many certificate programs, so what does the CAE mean and what does it stand for? Now, how can it transform an organization? So there's a lot of organizations out there, and they say, oh, we love the CAE. We want to hire CAEs. You see it more and more often in job position openings. So when they post the ad, CAE preferred. The reason people are doing that is they want somebody who kind of has an understanding of the nonprofit world, because how many people, when they were little kids, said, when I grow up, I want to be an association executive? Well, it certainly wasn't me. I wanted to be an FBI agent. And, so so when you have the organization make that commitment to it. Now, the downside of that is they might hire a bunch of CAEs, but the organization has to have a culture where they're going to listen to the CAEs. And that's the other part of that, is getting the organizations to transform by actually listening to the people at the CAE and letting them work together, letting them bring ideas, and supporting their continued education.
Well, and the reason I'm excited to introduce the two of you is, Andrew in his own way has been a long time advocate for the designation and respect of the identification of the skill sets necessary for association leaders. And Andrew, I think back to the Compass program, and some of the products that the Institute of Association Leadership developed. And while not a test, I think we worked quite extensively on developing for boards areas of evaluation that they could use to measure the performance and the experience of their executive directors in a professional context.
Right.
Yeah, and I think yes, and Cecilia, as you're talking, I mean, I've got loads of my head is buzzing with questions, but also sort of responses to what where you're coming from on it. And let me be absolutely. I mean, just leave my cards out. I'm absolutely an advocate for shared professional standards, shared professional recognition, and that I'm absolutely an advocate for it on a global scale, recognizing that the world now is smaller than ever, but also the opportunities are bigger than ever for us to work, as Elisa and I do, and perhaps you do, to work across borders. And I think it's incredibly important that we have a standard of professionalism, of expertise, of knowledge, of skills that that are recognised not just within the parameters of our own sort of local economies. I think I think at the moment, however, when I'm out on the CAE, I'm not a certified association executive, and obviously I'm talking to you partially with my UK hat on, and there aren't very many people. In fact, I don't think I know anybody in the UK who is a certified association executive. And Lisa, you're absolutely right. We spent a lot of time trying to promote the concept of professional standards in the UK. And I think one of the challenges we've got, and I think this is probably fair in all of the markets in which the CAE or equivalent professional accreditation is prevalent, is that I sometimes feel like we're talking to preaching to the choir is the wrong phrase, but I feel like we're having a bit of an internal conversation with ourselves. And one of the biggest challenges is to get our volunteer leaders and our wider sort of factions of interested parties to understand as well the external value of a certified association executive is arguably more critical now than as generating the internal value within the profession. We all know that we're professional association execs. We all know what we do. We all understand it. We may not always be able to articulate it particularly well, but we certainly can empathize with one another and understand the value that we bring to our organizations. But for me, I'm seeing an increasing headache, which is, and we spoke about this in last week's podcast, the tensions that are mounting between our volunteer leaders and our professional association leaders is, I would say, the root cause is this fundamental lack of appreciation and understanding about what it is that we do. And so how do we translate the value of the CAE to the external interested parties rather than the external market, because they're not necessarily our target market.
Right. See, and that's a great point, Andrew, because if your own board of directors doesn't recognize the value of the professional work you do, how are we supposed to promote that to the external audiences of the world? And again, why I'm a CAE evangelist, because it's really about being an evangelist for the profession. But I can tell you, you said you don't know anyone in the UK. I do happen to know there are people within the Commonwealth, because the first Australians to earn the CAE were in a study group I mentored a few years ago. So there are a couple of people in Australia who have earned it. They have a pretty robust association community as well. But how are we going to get that across? So the problem in a lot of ways is that, in my opinion, and this is based on years of experience and talking to lots of people, working with lots of clients, boards don't understand their role.
No.
They don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. They get in the middle of the day-to-day. They treat the chief staff executive or CEO, if that's an easier term to keep in mind. They treat them like they're an employee, like the receptionist, when they're not. They are a CEO, very much like a corporation. That CEO at the corporation is running things at the company, reporting back to the board of directors. Board of directors monitors what they're doing and gives direction. And as long as the company's going in the right direction, the board lets them do their job. Nonprofit boards don't have that attitude. They come in thinking that the association runs like their profession. I ran an association for nursing home administrators. They came into every board meeting as if I was running a nursing home, and they couldn't grasp that difference. There's a big difference. And I see that in other boards as well. So what we need to start with is, charity begins at home, as the old saying goes. Let's get our boards understanding what they're supposed to be doing and why. If I hear one more board member call their staff worker bees, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to make threats or anything, but I'll probably scream pretty loudly. It's just like, but I call people, when I'm on networking calls and people say, well, the staff doesn't have that much to do. I will just call them. It's just like, are you kidding me?
I mean, I think it's as we discussed in last week's podcast. We spoke about that example where I came across where a member of an association was talking about the fact that the association staff were not their professional peers, and and they felt very hugely self-gratified when I agreed with them, and then felt completely despondent when I explained to them that they neither were the association staff's professional peers. Because, and this is it, we are constantly trying to marry up two distinct professions, who arguably are very often talking completely different languages, particularly if you have a highly technical, if the association or the membership organization is focused on a highly technical profession, then frequently the kind of concept of what we do as a profession, well, it simply isn't recognized as a profession. As you rightly say, we're viewed merely as, this is not to devalue the role of administration, but we are viewed as chief administration officers rather than chief executive officers, and it's a hugely dispiriting environment to work in. And do we think that, Lisa, sorry, I see that you've got your hand up, but do we think that one of the reasons, can I just want to sort of finish off my train of thought, if that's all right? Do we think one of the reasons that the number of people who are taking the CAE, who are engaging in the CAE, is starting to decline? Do we think it's because they are beginning to feel frustrations with the kind of the lack of progress we're making as a sector in terms of advocating our profession, and therefore they're equating a lack of value attached to CAE externally? Or is it simply that we have, we're beginning to saturate the market, which isn't necessarily a bad thing? What's the kind of rationale do you think around that? What do you think is the sort of patterns behind that?
I have some thoughts on that, but Elisa, you did have
No, please. This was the question I wanted to ask.
Sorry, Lise. Sorry, I
sorry, he's talking over you.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but
So this is an excellent discussion point because people have been asking me about this, and so I'm going to start with I'm going to do inductive reasoning. So I'm going to start with the small thing and go to the big thing. So we just had the May exam. So for those of you who are not familiar with the CAE program, the exam is offered twice a year, once in May and once in December. So we just had the May exam. Only 155 people sat for the exam. That is an anomaly. That's one of the lower numbers we've seen. We've also only saw 55% of those people pass the exam. And that's also an anomaly. That's very low. Usually the pass rate is 65 to 75% usually out of all the people who take it. Now, people were coming to me and saying things like, Cecilia, they made the exam harder. Why did they make the exam harder? And they did not make the exam harder because the exam is the exam. They give the exam. Okay, so no, they didn't make the exam harder. What we are seeing is, in my opinion, a lack of quality preparation tools for people to get ready for that exam. Also, the context, as I'm going up to the deductive here, the context of that exam is incorrect, in my opinion. The exam is not the end all of the journey. It is not the end all and be all. It is a thing you do along the way. You take that exam, earn that designation, but then you have to keep that designation. And that's the important part. So what we do in our study groups and our courses is we're always telling people it's about what you do after you pass. It's not the exam. The exam's 4 hours out of your life and 4 months of prep before that, because you have to do a lot of reading, you have to do a lot of studying. So what you're also seeing is a lot of the offerings out there across the board are very expensive for the individual, because we have to keep in mind a lot of organizations don't support the CAE. So people are paying out of pocket. So when you look at that, you have to adjust to the marketplace. So if you're paying out of pocket, I can't charge you $15,000 for something, right? I got to charge you something you can afford. And so what you're seeing is very expensive things that are not high quality. You're also seeing things like people. I saw some online communities where we were discussing, why do you think not that many people took the exam last December, back in 2021? And I saw this online discussion, and people were saying it's extortionist. The prices are extortionist. So here we are in the nonprofit profession charging prices that nonprofit people can't pay. And so there's that as well. We have not saturated the market because every single person who works at a nonprofit organization does not have the CAE. There's also a lack of understanding in other types of 501c organizations like foundations that they cannot earn it because they're not at an association. They're at a foundation. So,
you know, we've talked a lot about CAE, and it in itself is a brand. Yes, it's a designation, it's a brand, and it comes from I would say the Goliath in the marketplace, right?
mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of monopolies. I'm not a big fan of dynasties here. There's, I think, part of maybe the some contributing factor to why the numbers are down is because of the alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it's the CMP, whether it's, you know, a CNAP, whether it's a facilitation certification, whether it's a board or volunteer management certification. I mean, you can go on LinkedIn now and through Harvard Business Review, earn a certificate and put some letters after your name. I think
bingo.
I like the idea that people are not turning to a single source
mm-hmm.
for these type of professional designations. They should be diverse. They should be living. They should be responsive and evolutionary as time changes. You know, I got my CAE longer ago than I will admit, but I'm tied to the parent organization who owns, you know, the CAE name for the rest of my professional career. I want to explore other things. I mean, Andrew, is there an equivalent in the UK to the CAE?
No, not in that sense. No, I mean, no. When we talk about professional standards within the UK sector, within the UK non-profit or membership sector, you're either looking at executives, association executives, who, as you said earlier on, have gone down and got the credentials of the association. So, you know, you'll see somebody working for the Chartered Marketing Institute who has got they are chartered marketeers, whereas it's like, well, that's great, but you're not actually working in marketing in that sense. Or you will see organizations like the Institute of Directors or the Institute of Leadership and Management or the Chartered Management Institute will provide credentialing and they provide standards. But you know, it's really interesting because, you know, on one hand, I'm completely in agreement with you. You know, it's good to see that diversification and recognizing that actually, you know, association executive, the function, the role, association leadership is a diverse, complex sort of tapestry of skills and expertise and of relationships and of knowledge. And it does require more than just one facet of knowledge. However, I think an awful lot of time we're seeing individuals going down routes that aren't really wholly relevant to them. And so, you know, I agree with you that, and I love how we're talking about the behemoth and we're talking about the parent company, like we're not allowed to say the letters. But, you know, the reality is ASAE does have a monopoly on CAE at the moment, although it is, in fairness to ASAE, you know, in Australia, they're rolling it out in partnership with the AUSAE. And I know they got good chats going on with the AFSAE down in Kenya for the for sub-Saharan Africa, you know, and I know that they do work with the Canadians as well. So I mean, you know, they are reaching out through the various channels that they should be reaching out for, because again, there's nothing more dispiriting for any business network to see somebody else coming in and trying to take your market. Instead, they are looking to collaborate. But I think you know, I don't, but yeah, so where was I going with this? I do agree that it's good to get diversification, but actually I don't see it as a monopoly. I see it as by ASAE. I see it as somebody taking an opportunity to capture a market that is, apart from, if ASAE hadn't done it, it's completely untapped. You know, and the more, I think, the more we see ASE and the CAE credentials rolled out, I would like to see, however, a more diverse suite of accreditation, recognizing that actually, you know, the role and function, for example, of a membership officer or you know, a conference or an annual meetings manager are not necessarily the same. They're not the same skill sets as, you know, the chief executive officer or indeed any of the volunteer leaders. So I think there's a lot of scope there to develop additional layers of, and perhaps a more sophisticated layering of the CAE. But Actually, I don't. I see it as good on the ASAE for capturing a market that isn't, and that hasn't responded. I think, and the irony is, the thing that I think frustrates me the most about all of this, we work, particularly in the UK context. And I am talking with my UK hat on. We work in an industry that exists to provide individuals with personal professional development within their relevant sectors and industries and professions. We work in an industry that advocates the professionalism of its members, of its membership, whatever industry they work in. And yet, I would argue, as a standalone industry, association professionals are really bad at valuing personal professional development, which is ironic given that it's the core foundation of our business models, regardless of where in the world we're working. So, again, I think that goes back to that piece we were talking about earlier on about value. And I wonder if the next stage in the evolution of the CAE is looking at how do we diversify that piece in itself so that we generate perhaps more. And I hear what you're saying, Cecilia, and of course you're absolutely right. We haven't saturated the market. Of course not. Of course not. And it would take millennia to do that, I would think. But actually, I think there's ways in which we can diversify the market further by looking at the tiering within an organization and reflecting that, accordingly. But those are just my sort of initial
I'm
thoughts.
glad you brought that up, Andrew. That's something I've thought for a number of years. The CAE, as it's currently set up, is a basic understanding of nonprofit management, but you have people coming in and taking this exam after being in the profession for a number of years. I took a course to get ready for my CAE exam, which I am not embarrassed to admit was back in 2015, after I had lobbied for 10 years for consultants to be able to do it. But that's another podcast. But I've been saying for a number of years, why don't we have that gradation? Why don't we have like other certification programs, a 3-tiered system, your first level, your second level, your third level? Because then we would have that education for the C-suite people. We'd have that education for the more experienced mid-level people. And then that entry level is for people who are new to the profession, because you would not believe how many people get hired at associations, have no freaking idea what they're about, what they do, why they're there. I just write articles for the magazine. And it's like, dude, would you learn?
At every level as well, actually, Cecilia. How many people do we know have gone in at C-suite level and don't have a clue what the hell they're doing?
They're usually from industry.
Yeah.
I gotta say it. People, I know you love your industry and your profession. Quit hiring your own to run your association. They don't know how.
I agree completely, 100%.
I just gotta say it. I gotta say it. Please stop.
I've done it so I can run it. Just no longer exists.
No.
It's no
I'll tell
longer.
you what I used to tell otolaryngologists, and for those of you out here who do not know what an otolaryngologist is, as an ear, nose, and throat doctor. I used to tell them, you would not hire me to do ear surgery. I would not hire you to run an association. So don't think you can do both, because you can't. It's a very different skill set. You have to know how to manage different kinds of people. It's relationship management. And then people come in with the attitude from that profession. Doctors coming in to run an association for doctors is a nightmare. It's like having to work when I worked at an association for otolaryngologists, we were all like grown-up professional people, 35 and up. They come in and start talking to us like we're interns, and we have to, bend over and wipe their chair off before they sit down. It's like, no, you're talking to grown-ups here, folks. Sorry.
Well, and I think part of this, you mentioned the layers of expertise, and I actually have a different take on it. I think that there are opportunities for professional development within different departments. Not every director of business development wants to be the CEO. Not every component relations professional wants to be the number one. Right. I would like to see commitments to professional expertise and ongoing development in some of these departmental or association subsets. I mean, volunteer management and governance and parliamentarian work, that's unique. And not every person in each of these departments wants to be the number one. That's not an automatic aspirational, given. And I've advocated for a long time for a CRP designation. I think that's a specialty within the association space. I don't know whoever will invest
CRP,
in it.
Sorry, what's CRP?
You have to component
sorry.
relations professional.
Right.
Component relations,
Have
chapters, regions, branches, affiliates,
Yeah.
managing and supporting and facilitating a network of associations within an association structure is a specialty.
Yeah.
And I come from construction, commercial construction, and yes, you're building a building, but the electricians are specialists, the plumbers are specialists, the drywallers are specialists. There are specialists within the overall project. And I would like to see that mirrored in association work. And the only people I see getting that attention right now are the meeting planners.
Yeah.
Right? They have their CMP, which is great. I highly respect it. It's professionalized their path and what they do in that department and in that section of the business. I wish it was just more, I think it was more recognized in other specialties.
Well, I think that's a really good point. I was painting a broader picture. Mm-hmm. And what I see you outlining, Elisa, is, gradations and variations within that. Like you could get a CAE with an emphasis in CRP, because what you don't want to do is dilute the certification.
Correct.
The designation, right? So you could focus on that like CMP. And I absolutely agree with you. Not everybody wants to run the organization someday. But there's also a call from the C-suite for more education for C-suite people, more that higher level, more in-depth stuff. But I think when we look at association transformation and how committing to promoting the profession, let's take CAE out of it. Let's promote it as a profession. That's really what we all need to do. That has to be part of our core value as association professionals or nonprofit professionals, is we have to go out there and we have to say, hey, this is a profession. I'm an ambassador for my profession. One of the things that I coach people to do now is if they're getting ready for the exam, if it's the first time they've seen it or the second or third time, think of yourself as a CAE candidate. That really shifts your mindset. So it's like being a PhD candidate. I am getting ready to do this thing. I'm going to earn it. And so it really gives you a different focus. It makes you stand out as well by saying I'm a CAE candidate. But what if we all said to ourselves when we got up and started work every day, I am a nonprofit executive. I am an association professional. And imagine that mindset shift. And we start telling people, hey, let me educate you about what I do. It's like, it's too bad there is not an association out there for association professionals promoting the profession and educating the public about what we do. And why we do it. That's what I have to say. The association profession came out of the early history of the settling of North America by Europeans. Okay. And it's what Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about in Democracy in America. It is the power of our groups that is what set settlers in North America apart. So people who became Americans, that's what set us apart. We came together to make things happen. We came together for a shared interest. And then once that was finished, then we went our separate ways again and then came back together, which is a little different viewpoint than some of the other countries in the world. They had a different experience coming. But I have seen over the last 10, 15 years, people around the world looking to the United States for guidance and examples and modeling of what it means to run a nonprofit. What does it mean to be a nonprofit professional? And so they're looking to us. This is a great opportunity to reach out all over the world. There are associations in Brazil. I talked with somebody on my podcast a few weeks ago from Brazil about component relations in Brazil. So it's everywhere. We're all trying to connect. We're all trying to make the world a better place, at least the place where our 2 feet are standing. So why not make our profession a better place?
Andrew, I forgot to mention that Cecilia is an amazing historian. And I will admit my history these days is coming from the current season of Outlander. So I cannot speak to history accurately.
All I can say is she should leave Jamie alone to live his life. Go back to the 20th
century. That's a different episode. That's Association Transformation Unplugged.
Okay. Sorry.
But before we get into any world debates or historical debates, I want to bring this home. And coming off of our last podcast, this is really really an appropriate next step. But I want to remind all of those association leaders in this space that as we demand respect for our profession and we seek not only ongoing education, but opportunities to teach and to learn and to mentor and to give back, we have to show our members the same respect for their profession. And when they come to the board table and when they volunteer and they lead, we have to recognize that those association tasks and those governance and bylaws and nonprofit things that we're asking them to understand and to do, we have to educate them in that. It's not their first skill set. It's not their first language.
Right.
So as we are looking to be respected, we have to give that same respect back and also attempt to learn about their profession as we are asking them to learn about our profession. So this culture of mutual respect, I believe, has to occur not only at the board and leadership level, but in this professional respect aspect. Wait, that sounded respect aspect. I don't like that.
Respect aspect ratio.
There
the
you go.
Ratio of respect for each profession is equivalent to the knowledge brought into the boardroom.
Yes. So, again, we're taking a snapshot. We're defining a culture, and I think a profession that's moving in the right direction. This will be an ongoing conversation. And Cecilia, we look forward to having you back. Look forward to seeing what the May numbers and the December numbers look like. I'm interested to see what other countries and what other non-American ASAEs do with their learning and their opportunities. But thank you so much for joining us. Finally, good luck with nonprofit conversations. Best of luck with Rogue Tulips. And Andrew, any final thoughts?
Yeah, but I'm going to copyright them all before I put them onto recording.
I love it. Well, thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. You can find Association Transformation wherever you get your podcasts. We're preparing for our 2023 content calendar. So reach out, let us know what you think we should tackle. Let us know if you'd like to be a guest.
Season four. That's
season
what we're talking. Big it up. We're talking about season 4.
Wow.
I think we're gonna hit 100 in season 4.
100 listeners.
Congratulations.
I was going to say 100 episodes.
Oh.
Congratulations. I'm hitting season 5 in 2023.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And hit 200 episodes in June.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how much we've elevated associations and the 501 world just through podcasts. Our podcast, yours, the recognition of these conversations is amazing. I hope we continue to advance them. And we encourage you to make us one of your favorites wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, we say put your members and your mission first.